I think we're going to wait a few minutes and then go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. We're just going to wait a minute or so and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. We're just going to wait a minute or so and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. I guess I'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Zaner. I run an AI consulting company called Ferociter. And what we do is we help companies figure out their AI strategy. One of the things that we help them with is coming up with a governance plan, as well as a roadmap. And then we help them implement whatever AI projects that we do need to do. And today I'd like to talk about a term that is a little lofty, AI governance, and it's a topic that we've been talking a lot about if you've been doing AI at work and things like that. And my goal today is really twofold. It's to kind of talk. So I want you to leave knowing exactly what AI governance means in practice. What exactly it means. To me, I think it's a little bit of a fusion of compliance, security, data, accountability, and it's a little bit more than compliance. And so if you leave here knowing a little bit more about AI governance, that's one of my goals. The other goal I have is being able to take a governance framework and apply it to any type of AI rollout, any type of pilot program that you're doing, and kind of know the first steps on how to approach it. I've split up this presentation into 4 parts. So the first part is we're going to talk about kind of the problem. And the way I like structuring it is saying, why exactly we need AI governance. And I'll talk about a few real life examples of companies making a few mistakes. And then we'll talk a little bit about the framework that we use here at Ferociter. I'll talk a little bit about the frameworks that other companies are using. And then I want to talk about like a use case. I think that unless you see it applied to an actual AI project, that it's a little amorphous. And so I have a AI project that we'll like walk through, and we'll talk about the different pillars and how to think about it and how to approach that. And then the last thing is that if you know me, you know I love a workshop or a worksheet. And so what I've done is come up with a worksheet that you can kind of use and to start thinking about, okay, like if I'm rolling an AI project out, do I check all of these different boxes? And obviously governance at a large enterprise or really any company is a little bit more complicated than this, but at least it kind of gets you to start thinking about compliance and governance. So one thing I want to talk about is if you're someone like me and you like the same lunch every day, you probably find yourself at Chipotle pretty often. And Chipotle came out with an AI bot, right, that you're able to like talk to it. And this is a type of attack called prompt injection. And so what you could do is try and make the chat bot do something that it wasn't programmed to do. And we use something called guardrails, right? So in the system prompt, when we say, hey, chatbot, go do this, this, and this, right? We restrict the actions and what the chatbot is able to do. And even though Chipotle did that and they rolled this out and they had plans and everything, you were able to kind of hack it using an attack called a prompt injection. And so in this picture, if you needed help with your computer science homework, Chipotle's bot could actually help you out with that, helping you do something that it wasn't intended to do. And in terms of security, right, like this is a pretty minor one. You know, you lose a little bit of money on the tokens that you're using on the back end. But you know, imagine this is something that's able to actually go out and take actions, right? Send an email, provide a refund to a customer, right? This type of activity, right? We don't really want. And then something a little less fun than Chipotle is this prestigious law firm, Sullivan and Cromwell. They were submitting a brief for a bankruptcy court case. And it turns out that they made up a few cases, so they hallucinated it. And this is something that I've been talking to some lawyers about as well, and about how to do the actual verification processes. But you know, the thing is that you can have policies in place, you can have all types of rules in place, verification in place, but if you don't use it, right, you know, and that's kind of one of the things about AI governance that makes it more than just a set of policies and rules, is that it's kind of an operating system, right? Like it's a rhythm to monitor these systems and to like watch it, you know, make sure, right, you harden it up front, and then you make sure that it's safe and secure. Right, and so these are just two examples of companies where, you know, deploying AI is hard, and just two examples of places where AI deployments can go wrong, and reasons why AI governance is so important. Right, so the reason it's important is because the reason it's important is that it's a real problem. These systems can be fickle at times. AI models can hallucinate, right? And if we're having them do real work, right, we need to make sure that they are controlled and that we know exactly what is happening. And so when it comes to AI governance, right, there's three questions that I like to start with. The first one is, what data is going to the AI, right? Like what data is the AI touching? The second thing is, what can it do, and whose responsibility is this, right? To like monitor what it can do, right? So like, what data is it touching? what can it do? Whose responsibility is it? And the third one is what happens when it fails, right? What is the kind of plan that you have, right? What are we doing to prevent it from failing? But if you can, with any type of AI system that you have, with any type of AI rollout that you have, if you can start with these three questions, you're well on your way to having a governance plan. And just to kind of visualize, right, the risk, the blast radius of these AI tools and AI rollouts, right? As we give these AI agents more, as we give any of these AI systems more responsibilities, that introduces more risk in what they're able to do. That doesn't necessarily mean that you don't deploy these systems, but it's just something to consider. And just down the line, when you're building these systems, right, like you just need to be a little more cognizant of it, right, and control the blast radius a little bit more. And so the framework we use at Froster is a combination of different frameworks, but it's 5 pillars. Number one is policy. Who can use AI with what data, right? Who's using it? Who is this available to, right? One example that I like talking about is, if you have an AI chatbot that's able to look at salary information, right? Perhaps you don't want people outside of HR being able to take a look at that, right? So the same kind of data restrictions you have regularly, this is when you also assign it to an AI system. A good rule of thumb is if you would not assign that amount of permission to a human, right? You should not do it to an AI. The second is risk assessment. And that is just being able to think about on paper, right? Like what is the worst case scenario, right? So in the example of a customer service bot that allows you to get refunds, at most you're able to get refunds for something that you didn't buy, or a refund for something without verification that you actually didn't receive it. That's risk assessment. Vendor management is right. So the kind of these, if you're using an OpenAI or an Anthropic API, right? If you're using Claude, you're sending data and you're using their AI, they're a vendor, right? You're taking your data, you're sending it to them, and they're sending it back to you. And when we're doing vendor management, it's very important that you know what data you're sending out, right? And what is their retention policy? So for example, if you have PHI, right, you can't really be sending that to regular OpenAI, right? You might have to sign some type of BAA with them. And so knowing what type of data also ends up in your vendor, right? They also have logs and things like that, perhaps confidential proprietary information you wouldn't want in any vendor's logs. Model and workflow oversight, right? So if something were to go wrong, who do you go to ask, hey, like this is working or not, right? Who is accountable for making sure that workflow and that model is working? And another element of oversight is something we call evals, which is how well a model is. Essentially, it's a word for test cases, right? So if we have an AI system and it's supposed to perform in a specific way, then we need to track the outputs of what is coming out of the AI system and measure it against what we expect the AI system, how we expect the AI system to work. And the incident response is, okay, worst case scenario, if something were to go wrong, right, what do we do? So for example, right, if you have an AI revenue manager that is setting prices for a hotel, if that revenue manager goes down, right? What do? You have to have somebody go in and actually do it, right? And you should know that the system isn't working as soon as possible, right? Because any type of shift in pricing affects, especially independent hotels' bottom line. And so that's kind of the 5-pillar framework. We use that for Osler. There's different types of framework. The NIST has a risk management, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They have an AI risk management framework. But I wanted to walk through like a full example of what taking a look at all these 5 pillars looks like, right? So if we have a chatbot that does customer service, right? It's saying, hey, I want to make a return. Hey, I Hey, I have questions about this policy. The first one is that what internal data is it touching, right? Is it touching the customer's data, right? Their previous history data. What is it? Ideally, it wouldn't be touching any confidential information beyond that. And then who's using it, right? Like what customers are able to use it, like what is, right? And having a set policy on that. For risk assessment, right? Like if it fails, right? Like you have a customer service line, maybe they'll just call that. Maybe it will authorize a return that it wasn't permissioned to do, or that wasn't correct, right? That's the risk management assessment. Vendor management, which is any data you're sending to OpenAI or your AI provider, right? Should they be having that data? Where are they storing that data? Right? If it's just customer data, then it should be fine, as depending on how y'all classify that internally, but typically it should just be fine, right? It's just, hey, I bought 5 couches, and then incident response, right? If something does go wrong, if a return does go wrong, if the chatbot goes down, right? What are the ways that we're thinking about it? And just to bring that previous graph home, right, is that the amount of risk that your organization takes on increases with the amount of action that the chatbot is able to take on. I'm just going to make this. Alrighty. So when we're talking about who's responsible for this, it becomes very easy to say one team is responsible for it, but AI governance is actually cross-functional, right? And you have to get input and make sure that stakeholders across compliance, security, operations, data, right, are all on the same page. And this one is just, and this will come back to the worksheet, but this is not to say that if your AI is able to do more, you shouldn't roll it out. All this to say is, if your AI is able to do more, you should just have better policies and more controls in place. When it comes to vendors, when it comes to vendor management, 2 terms I want to talk about is ZDR, which is called zero data retention. So sometimes you have to sign an agreement with Anthropic or OpenAI so that they don't store your data. They take your data, they process it, and they send it back. And that depends on your plan, and if you have an enterprise contract with them, just something to think about, and just know that term. And then what they will sometimes say is also, your data is being, when you send them data, it may be being trained on. And so, for example, if you have a strategic policy if you have a strategic policy, and you don't want anybody to know, and it ends up in the training data set, in future iterations of the model, you might say, hey, what is company's A strategic plan? And it might tell you, right? So that's why it's a concern of being involved in the training data. And so, you want to make sure that when you send data, right, like it's not being trained on. And this is what I was talking about previously when it comes to evals, right, is that we want an expected way of how the system, should be working, and we want to compare it to how the system is working now. And so to answer that question of how do we make sure that the system is going to be working 6 months from now, it's by running evals on them and continuously monitoring the system and making sure that the system is doing what it's supposed to, and it's doing it securely and it's doing it safely. And with incident response, our incident response usually has 4 main things, right? How we're going to detect it, how we're going to contain it, if we need to escalate it to a different team, how we're going to do that, and then if we need to restart the system, right? How do we restart the system again safely with the safeguards that we'll put in place as a result of said incident. Right. So we spoke about why AI governance is important. It's because, these products can go off the rails sometimes, right? We can make mistakes that affects company brand, right? Like, and at its worst, right, a potential hack, right? With the prompt injection stuff, that can get kind of scary if it has access to specific data. You can start asking it, because if you're able to prompt inject it and has access to that sensitive data, right, then you're able to start grabbing that sensitive data too. And so what I did was I put together some type a worksheet where we can kind of look at it and see all the work through what it actually takes to put together a governance plan and how to think about it. And you can find it I put it on the website. So if you go to froster.co/governance, you should be able to take a look at it. I'm going to pull it up too. And so if you go to that website, I'll put it back up. Froster.co/governance. You should get this governance worksheet, and I put this together for this. I put this together for this event to just kind of get an idea of what AI governance looks like, and what I want to be able to do. And I just want to walk through this, and then you're able to take this home and kind of work through it and kind of think about it. And if you have like an AI use case that you're thinking about rolling out, right, feel free to use this to help you determine what to do. Kind of has some instructions here. And then what we do is we break it up into like eight different sections. And just for the sake of exercise, what we do is say, hey, for each area, we have a specific number of points. And if you get a specific number of points in terms of how well it's controlled, how well the policies are written, do you have an incident plan, then you're able to deploy. And if you have too many points, right, like maybe it's best that you don't deploy. Right, and so you just rank how sensitive sensitive everything is, and you just kind of walk through the questions, right? And so if you have, if you're able to if you get a lot of points, right, then probably not great to deploy, but these are just questions to kind of look at, and it's a worksheet for y'all to play around in. But yeah, I mean that is AI governance in a nutshell. I'm going to leave this up here. This is the QR code. This is my first time doing this. I will be doing more over the next few weeks, and any feedback that you do provide is just going to be used to make any future LinkedIn Lives more helpful. This is a terse topic. And we'll take any feedback, or if you have any questions. I'll be here for a few more minutes, but thank you all so much for coming. Oh, I had a question from Malika. These points. These points. Oh, the points on the worksheet. Yeah. So if the points are more of a metaphor, but the more points you have, right, the less it's been the more points you have, the less it's been defined. So you want like fewer points, right? So if it's been defined, right, you just check it off and it doesn't have any points. And the goal is that you want the least number. You want the least number of points. Great. Well, I'm going to end it. Thank you all so much.